Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'll be replacing the main cooling fan on my 2004 Chevrolet SSR, but the same procedure applies to all model years 2003 to 2006. And I'll be replacing the OEM supply, which is actually a rebadged VW fan with a direct replacement from Simple Engineering. It's labeled as an SSR direct replacement main fan on the Simple Engineering website with the part number of SE-MFK-1. So as you can see, it's a shrouded fan. It has the original style connector with bracketry to make it a direct drop-in replacement. The original VW rebadged fan has a problem with the brushes getting contamination in the guides for the brushes, and then they eventually stick, and then they don't move as they should, and then they lose contact with the central part of the electric motor, causing the electric fan to just stop running. So of course improvements are, this is a shrouded fan, much better airflow through it. So it's just a much better solution than the original equipment supplied by GM. So after the introduction and information disclaimer, I'll go through the supplies necessary, some precautions to take on the front of the vehicle to make sure you don't scratch up some things. So if you find this video helpful and you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. You'll need a Google account to do so. Both of those, the account is free and subscribing to this channel is free, so I greatly appreciate it. And if you found this particular video helpful, hit that like button after viewing the video. I would greatly appreciate it. So let's get to work. Please review the automotive information, repair, and modification guidelines on this screen. Seek the advice of a repair professional if you're unsure how to perform any repair or modification safely and correctly. All repairs and modifications are performed at your own risk. We're now going to go through the supplies necessary to perform this fan replacement on your SSR. It's fairly minimal list of tools. Of course, with any repair, I normally wear gloves. I'm going to wear some protective eyewear. Shouldn't be a big issue for this particular thing, but that's a standard thing for any automotive repair that I work on. I'm going to use this plastic pry bar tool to remove the two clips that are on the front of the shield in front of the air cleaner. I'm going to use a 10mm socket, and that's going to be used for most of the bolts and nuts coming off of the various items around the air cleaner. And I ended up I'm going to use an 8mm socket on the hose clamp around the tubing going from the air cleaner into the throttle body. You should tighten it very lightly when you go to put it back on, or you could use a flat plate screwdriver. You may need an Allen wrench for the removal of the radiator fan, because there are two securing bolts in the later 05 and 06 model years where the tabs on the fan are put into place and then a securing bolt goes in place to hold the fan in place. Earlier versions of earlier model years had a zip tie, which loops around the plastic tab for the support for these particular tabs coming out of the radiator cooling fan. So whichever one you have, you need to, of course, remove what's there now to be able to pull out the original fan. The air cleaner and bracketry above the radiator fan basically keep it in place from the top side, and you'll see on the OEM fan there's a couple rubber bumpers on the very top there that the bottom side of the top bracket actually kind of touch in that area to keep it in place as well. And then I've got a 3/8" drive tool here to help me speed up the removal of some of the bolts. So let's take a look at the front of the SSR and what I've done to protect the chevron bar in the front, and then we'll start tearing it apart to get the original fan out. Here's a couple of things that you might note in the picture at this point. I put some painter's tape across my chevron bar across the front here, just to protect the fact, well, it's a chrome one, or whether it's chrome or satin chrome, I would put this on here just to protect the finish. We're going to be lifting this plastic piece up and over, and there are some bolts that need to be removed that have the extension I'm using goes right above this. So I want to make sure I don't rub on them and cause any scratches in it. And you might notice that there's some foam padding around here, which looks like a later 05, 06. I've retrofitted the pieces onto my 04 air cleaner. So if you're questioning whether I really have an 04, I do, but I just retrofitted this foam in place in case you're wondering. So the first thing is we're going to use that plastic pry tool, get these two pins out of the way. So I've got those two. And next I'm going to then remove the 10mm nuts that are here on the back side of the plastic piece here, so we can then lift it out.
One. So it's located just behind here. There's a little dip here, and you can see in this other view from the side where it's located. Now we're going to lift the plastic piece out. Again, the painter's tape is in here to protect the coating on the chevron bar. So I'm pushing it back just a little to lift it up and pulling it out just a little bit here because it goes across the edge. And we have to get it around the hood latch here. So there's a little bit of gymnastics there, but it's pretty easy. So we have that piece out of the way. Next, I'd like to disconnect the electrical connection to the air sensor between the air cleaner and the throttle body, and then also disconnect the hose clamp that's connecting this tubing to the air cleaner. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to take this gray plastic piece and slide it down on the connector. Okay, with that slid down, I should be able to now grab the tab that's in here and compress it, and that should release this connector. And I'm going to place this in the back here to keep it out of the way. So we now have this, so I can remove the whole air cleaner out of the area. Some people will put it off to the side. Whichever way you want to do it, that's fine. My preference is actually to remove it out of the area just so I don't have to worry about falling while I'm working on it. I'm now going to loosen the hose clamp that is connecting the air cleaner with this tubing to the throttle body. You can do this with a flat blade screwdriver. I'm using an 8mm. This is a clamp with a particular set of notches in it. So when you get it back in place, make sure that those notches, which are here, go at this top position here. So now I've got that slid off, and I should be able to begin to pull this off, but we'll do that in just a moment as we pull this out. Next thing is we have the top radiator hose, which is sitting on the plastic shelf of the air cleaner. I'm just going to simply move this off to the back, and I would suggest to do this when it's cool in the cooling system. A hot cooling system would not be a preferable thing to be working on this on the vehicle to try to perform this procedure. We're now going to remove the two bolts that are still remaining on the air cleaner holding it in place. So those were exposed by the plastic shield being removed. So I'm going to loosen those and remove those. One. We're going to put those back in place once we get the air cleaner back out so we know where they came from. So we have this loosened on both sides. We have the clamp loosened. We have the electrical connector removed. So I should be able to lift up on this. And with the hose clamp removed, I should be able to wiggle out the air cleaner from the mass airflow sensor here. There we go. Comes out as an assembly. And so here we have, again, the mounting holes here on the bottom. This sits on top of this bracket for the top side of the radiator, and here's the hose shelf on the back side, and of course the mass airflow sensor with a piece of dirt in it. I'm going to put these two bolts back in place just so I know where they came from.
We're now going to remove the upper radiator support bracket by removing these two bolts, this bolt here, upper bolt here by the latch, this upper bolt by the latch, this lower bolt, and these two bolts on the side. The washer underneath the bolts by the latch are smaller, so they will go into the bracket so that we know that where they go after we remove it from the vehicle. Notice that the rubber grommets for the upper radiator mounts go into the elongated holes here, so when we get this bracket back in place, make sure the rubber grommets are in place just like you see them now. We're now checking to make sure we got all the bolts out, and we're now ready to remove the upper radiator support bracket. We wiggle it a little bit to get it past the latch bracket, and it's up and out. Now that we have the bracket out, I'm going to put the two latch related bolts back into their position so we don't lose which ones go into that position. One of the spring clip nuts fell off when I removed the bolts, so I bent that back into shape, and I'm going to put that back in place. And now I'm going to also insert the bolts that came out of each of these locations back in their original location so I don't lose where they came from.
Now going to disconnect the original fan from the wiring harness from the vehicle. there's an interlocking tab here to make sure that this doesn't come apart. So we need to lift this up gently to disengage the lock. And then we should be able to pull that out. There are 3 connectors in it. They look in good shape. There's no burning or anything, so there's been no arcing or anything, so we're in good shape there. Put that off to the side.
To remove the original equipment fan from the backside of the radiator, you'll need to remove a zip tie or Allen-headed bolt on each side of the backside of the radiator itself. This was used by the factory to secure the OEM supplied fan to the mount points on the backside of the radiator. Simply remove the zip tie or remove the Allen-headed bolt. You will not need to reuse these going forward with the new fan.
We're now removing the original fan out of the engine bay, and we've disconnected the electrical connector. We've got that off to the side out of the way. We've removed the zip ties in my case, or in your case you may have 2 Allen-headed bolts to remove. At least that's the variety from the factory. If it's something else, it's probably someone else has changed it. But those are the 2 examples I know from the factory: zip ties or Allen-headed bolts. So now there's 4 rests or tabs that are on the sides of the radiator where the fan is now sitting. So we just need to wiggle it, not putting any pressure on the center core here. So we're just going to wiggle it a little bit, and it should come up like that. And we're going to have to dip down the passenger side just a little bit to allow the driver's side to come up and out. Again, you don't want to hit the radiator core itself. And so we have this up, and we're going to walk it out, and there's the original fan coming out of the vehicle.
We're now taking a look at the driver's side radiator mounts on the back side of the radiator. There are 2 on the passenger side. I'll show you in a moment. The red arrows point at the clip portions of these radiator mounts. The mounting tabs that are on the new cooling fan will engage into the clip portions, which are pointed to by the red arrows. Make sure you fully seat the mounting tabs into those clips on both sides. And the 2 top mounting tabs on the cooling fan, there are shoulders on them to make sure the fan doesn't move side to side. And the thing that actually keeps the fan in place from going up and down is the upper radiator support bracket that we'll be installing after we get the fan installed.
You might want to take this opportunity to also examine the ground here on the frame to make sure it's in a good, clean state and tight. And now we'll get the new cooling fan in place.
We're now going to install a replacement fan, and we're going to angle it just a little bit to get it in, much like we had to take the original fan out, but it should go in pretty easily here. Again, we don't want to touch the radiator core itself. So I'll get it past that bracket. And okay, and now we're in the general vicinity of where we need to be, and it should just drop into those receiving mounts on the radiator, which it did. Okay. And the rubber seal for the new fan should be basically on or very near the radiator core. And with my 04, this shroud for the ECM is right here, but it does clear that. We're going to now reconnect the electrical connector. Again, before you connect yours, make sure there's no burning or arcing corrosion that you see in here, and there's none in this particular one, so we're good here. Make sure the seal around the connector is intact, because that's what keeps the water out. So we're going, and the tab looks in good shape. So now I'm going to route this into the connector for the new fan, and this plastic cover here on my ECM gets in the way just a hair. Okay, so we have the connector ready to go in, and we're just going to push it in until it snaps like that, so that that's in place. And we're fully in place there. So now we're at the point we're just going to reverse the items that we took off, making sure that we pay attention to lightly torquing
the bolts here hand tight. That should be sufficient here. The clamp for the air cleaner connection to the throttle body, again, there's a groove here to keep in place. Don't over torque. I'm going to use an 8mm with a ratchet socket on it, but you can use a flat blade screwdriver if you want. Just again, don't go over torquing this because it's going to be torquing against the plastic on the air cleaner. But let's basically fast forward through those steps because you've seen the uninstall of the items. So let's start doing the install of the items back on the vehicle.
First off, we're going to install the upper radiator support bracket, removing the bolts from their various locations. There are two that are specific to the latch, which have the smaller washers on them. So as I insert this, make sure that the rubber grommets from the radiator insert into the bracket easily with no pressure. Then I start hand threading the bolts in their various locations. Again, the two with the smaller washers go by the latch, and I get them inserted into the various locations, and then I'll be torquing them to a moderate torque with the power ratchet wrench just to speed things up. You can of course use a hand ratchet wrench or boxed end wrench, ratcheting wrench, whatever works for you. Just lightly snug, you don't want to get over torquing these. And then after that, I'll be removing the two bolts there from the air cleaner assembly so that I can then insert the air cleaner assembly. And then as I insert the air cleaner assembly, I'm going to put the hose on the hose shelf on the back side of the air cleaner assembly, and then insert the tubing on the back end of the air cleaner, putting the two bolts on the front side of the air cleaner assembly and lightly snugging those. And then I'm going to insert the hose in its full installed position and lightly torquing the clamp, again not over torquing because it's plastic underneath. Then I'm going to reconnect the mass airflow sensor connector, and once inserted, make sure that the gray plastic clip is put into the fully locked position. Put the front plastic assembly, putting the two push pins in place, and then put the two nuts on the back side of it to fully secure it. Now we're going to begin the functionality verification of the newly installed fan by starting the engine and reaching normal operating temperature. But before starting the engine, make sure that you confirm that the upper radiator hose has been placed back on the radiator hose support shelf on the backside of the air cleaner, and also confirm that the mass airflow sensor wiring harness has been reconnected to the mass airflow sensor. Start the engine and warm it to normal operating temperature. At that point, engage the air conditioning system of the vehicle, and if the outside ambient temperature is in the 65 to 70 degree or higher range, the pressure within the air conditioning system should reach a normalized value to cause the computer to turn on the low speed of the radiator cooling fan. If that's the case, you've now verified the low speed functionality of the fan, and the chance of the high speed working is nearly 100% at this point. If the ambient temperature is colder than the 65 to 70 degree Fahrenheit range, you may need to drive the vehicle and cause the cooling system to reach a temperature of 226 degrees Fahrenheit, where it will turn on the low speed fan functionality for you. Either way, once you've got that confirmed, you now have a successfully installed fan from Simple Engineering.
So I've got a much better cooling fan in place. It pulls a lot more air through it than the original GM supplied VW rebadged fan, and I have no fear of it actually failing on me like I did with the original one. Actually, in every SSR that I've had since this fan's been available, I put that fan into it. So if you're considering any sort of replacement or repair on a fan, in my opinion, don't go anywhere else other than Simple Engineering. Get the Simple Engineering SSR direct replacement main fan, and again, that's SE-MFK-1 part number, and I'll put again down in the description section of the video. Check it out there. Look for a link to Simple Engineering's website. So with that, I hope you enjoyed watching the video. It's been informative to you. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that like button if you found this video informative. I'll see you in the next one.
If you like this video, smash that like button. If this is the first time you stop by the channel, please click the subscribe button to the right. It's free. Click that bell notification to get notified when I upload new videos. Follow Retro Car Guy 530 on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Patreon. Thanks for coming to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.